Good evening. This is the ShallowCross Sports Network with the AA, bringing you another show. This evening, we're going to touch on Vanderbilt and see what they're doing to get prepared for the SEC. And it looks like Vanderbilt is looking for a better year than they had last year at 7-6. With that said, let's get right on into it. Okay, we're going to touch on Vanderbilt and talk about what they're doing to get ready for the SEC season. And looks like Vanderbilt, the outlook seems to be pretty bright. They did some things in the transfer portal, bought in a big offensive tackle from South Dakota, who is they're calling him the Diego Pavia of the offensive line, and it looks like. That they're gonna have some pretty good ball players, on that team this year, and they're gonna do a good job so far. So far, is what Clark Lee wants them to do, and of course, Coach Lee, he is. Coach Lee is really counting on the team to improve on last year's 76 season. And of course, Vanderbilt, they made a lot of improvements to their stadium, and that far end of the stadium completely been rebuilt. Looks like they built a new field house, and it's a whole lot of new boxes and all that stuff. So it looks like they're geared up for a big season this year, and they really want to beat Tennessee. Clark Lee does, and of course Diego Pavia wants to win the SEC championship, and he's really talking up the stuff that they can beat anybody. So. We'll see what happens. But the big win for them would be beat Tennessee. Now, they beat the Alabamas last year, beat Alabama and Auburn. So we got to make sure they can own up to what they're doing again this year. And so looks like the same. So basically the outlook on Vanderbilt is Vandy is, they were 76 last year, went to the Birmingham Bowl and won that championship there. And then, of course, they returned in Diego Pavia, and as the quarterback, he got that 6-year eligibility. And then, of course, the other big returnee is tight end Eli Stars, who was with Diego Pavia at New Mexico State. And so, and then they also have some talented wide receiver in Junior Sherrill, and they have some talented transfers also. Trent Hudson. He's a transfer, and then of course the defense returning 9 starters, and across the front they have a better lineup than what they had last year, and so Vanderbilt's going to be able to make some noise, with the front seven, and of course. The players, some of the top players that they have coming back is, Mike Rinaldi. He's like an edge rusher. And of course, I mentioned Eli Stars. He's a tight end, and then they have Bryce Henderson. Now Stars is injured. Don't know what the outcome of that's going to be, but we'll have to find out on him later. But just looking at Vanderbilt, our lads, just looking at our lads roster, and of course they they're showing that they have a transfer at wide receiver at the Z position named Hudson, and then they have another transfer named Richardson at the slot receiver. He's a transfer, and then they also have an offensive tackle. That's the big offensive tackle from South Dakota State. And then let's see. And then of course the center is a transfer also. And that offensive tackle from South Dakota State, his name is Glass, Isaiah Glass. And then of course you got the quarterbacks Diego Pavia, and running back is Alexander. He was a good running back for him last year, and then they seem to have some good backups in there also, transfers that transferred in. And then of course Junior Sherrill is going to start at the X receiver, so he's back. And then of course Cade McConnell, he's back at that. They got this weird position because they run sort of like a wing T type offense, and it has a whole lot of fakes and a whole lot of handoffs. I mean, they can hand off to the tight end going inside right up the middle of the field. So it's a lot of things they can do with that. And so they have a position called ST, and then they have another position called the SG. They have their guards and the tackles listed differently than a normal team would. And but anyway, they Chance Fitzgerald's another new transfer they have in at the wide receiver position, and they seem to be pretty well deep on the offensive side of the ball. Have a Bekowitz. Blaze Bekowitz is a transfer also from last year, I believe. He's the backup to Diego Pavia. So, and then you got a Drew Dickey, who's another backup behind him. So, those are the people on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, they didn't lose very many people at all. Like I said, everybody's just about back. I see where the strong safety is a C.J. Hurd, a transfer in, and then the nose tackle, defensive tackle, and the razor positions are all transfers, but they're backups to the starters from last year. So Adam Bryant and Mason Nelson, as well as Keen Cole. And then, of course, all the linemen, Seabrooks, Snyder Seabrooks, Quintana, Capers, Longale, Patterson, Fortinis, all those guys are back from last year squad. So it looks like they pretty well deep. They four deep in every position on the defense side of the ball too, which is what a SEC team is supposed to look like. And but the takeaway for Vanderbilt this year is that Vanderbilt, they want to build off of what they did last year and the success that they had, and they want to be able to do better than 7-6 and go to a bowl. And I think Coach Clark Lee is looking at, he wants to win the SEC championship. He thinks he can put together a team that can win the SEC championship. But his main focus really is to beat Tennessee. And they want to improve on what they did last year. So it looks like Vanderbilt bought in. I'm just looking at the transfers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Looks like they brought in 22 transfers in the portal. And some of those may not all be transfer portal players. Some of them could be high school players also. And just looking at the roster, they did have several freshmen that they brought in also. Let's see here. Yeah, here's a few freshmen they brought in, but it's just a look at their 2025 roster. And if you look, Vanderbilt tries to recruit hard in Tennessee, but they don't get a lot of players from Tennessee. Well, this roster seems to be pretty well lit. I say probably about 50%. No, about 30% Tennessee kids on this year's roster. So that's not bad. It's not bad at all. Clark Lee is recruiting real well with what he has, and of course Vanderbilt's got the money to go out and pay NIL to get players. So they're getting a lot better quality players in the transfer portal, and they out there dealing in the portal and battling other schools for these players. And so with the new they just had their new, I guess under Dr. Williams and James Franklin back in the day, they had and of course Coach Mason, they had the indoor practice facility built, and then they did a few other things to enhance the football experience for players, and so that helps with recruiting. And so we just have to wait and see what Vandy does. I think looking at their schedule, Vandy is going to open up with Vanderbilt's opening up with Charleston Southern at home, so that'll be an easy win. And then they got that next week they got Virginia Tech. So it looks like they're at Virginia Tech, and then that next week after that they go to Columbia, South Carolina to play South Carolina, and then they got Georgia State at home. And then they got Utah State at home, and then they go to Alabama to play on October the 4th, and then LSU on the 19th. They have them coming into Nashville, and then of course Missouri's coming to Nashville. Texas, they have to go to Texas to play Texas, and they played Texas tough here last year. It wasn't an easy game for Texas. And then of course Auburn. They got Auburn at home here in Nashville, and they got Kentucky at home, and then of course Tennessee. They have to go down to Tennessee to play Tennessee the last game of the season. That's on November looks like the 28th or so. So anyway, with that said, that's just the outlook on Vanderbilt, and of course before I end this show. Vanderbilt's special teams has always been elite. The real good field goal kicker, real good punter, and of course they play real good special teams. As far as covering kicks and so forth and punts. And so we just have to see how good they're going to be. Like I said, they have the nucleus based on what they did last year to win 8-9 games. And they got to upset some people like they did last year, But anyway, with that said, that's going to end the show for Vanderbilt. and we'll get some more information on Vanderbilt down the line, and we'll be able to present it to you. But looks like the outlook is bright for Vanderbilt for the 2025 season, and we'll see you on the next show. God bless.